Hello everyone and welcome back to Mycorrhiza. I'm still not sure if I'm saying that right or not. But today we're gonna do the second door in this little thing. Last time we were brutally attacked by a dog thing. We can't really call it a dog, can we? It's just a thing now. It's a thing. Let's just start. Oh, okay. Yeah, let's get into that part of this. Let's do that. That's the thing that I want to do. I want to dive right into the guide to funny faces. Yeah, let's go. Ugh. I shot awake, panting heavily, my clothes sticking to my skin due to all the sweat. My eyes darted around the room, but everything was quiet. I seemed to be safe. Safe? A nightmare. Seems like I just had a nightmare. I was chased by some kind of animal or monster, and there was some eerie plant. I had forgotten most of the dream, but I knew that it must have been terrifying. The pulsing pain in my head slowly subsided. I took a deep breath and kept mumbling to myself that it had all been a dream, nothing more. After calming down, I decided to take another look around the house. The fact that no one was here, even though the lights were on, was still nagging at the back of my mind. A look out of the window confirmed that it was still night. I must have slept for the whole day, or only for a few hours. Considering how tired I was, it must have been the latter. What? I left the bedroom to retry the doors, just in case. They were still locked. I really wanted to go home and take a shower. I smelled my clothes. They have indeed had started to smell slightly sour. The place seemed to have nothing left to offer. I'd be better off out in the streets, even if it was still dark, and I was still missing my wallet. All I needed to do was find a police station. They'll definitely be able to help me out. As I wandered around, I grew more and more aware of how big this town was. The buildings were pretty high, and nature was rather scarce. But it was strange how empty the streets were, considering how many people must be living in this town. My ears began to pick up the subtle sounds of laughter. The sounds turned to unease in my stomach. It was awfully late for such a public crowd. There wasn't cheering or rounds of applause, just laughter, loud and obnoxious laughter that didn't seem to pause for breath, nor subside, nor grow. It became louder as I approached the town center, becoming a wave of commotion by what sounded like to be a massive crowd. They just laughed and kept laughing. It sounded dreadful. I was tempted to change course and avoid the town center. Yet this direction was my best bet for finding an inn or a police station. These priorities outweighed my sense of danger. I pressed on. The laughter was bellowing with hundreds of voices, until finally I could glimpse the source of the commotion. The crowd gathered around a performer who was doing something to make them laugh. I strained to see the action, peeking through small gaps of people while keeping a safe distance. The group was just too dense. I couldn't see any details. Curiosity overwhelmed me, and I started pushing through the crowd of people. They seemed to melt away without paying much attention. As I approached, I passed the table with books. I couldn't make out their title, but I could see something that resembled two masks on the cover. Paying it no mind, I kept pressing onward. I couldn't understand what was happening. The performer wasn't making any sounds. I couldn't make out any movements from beyond the crowd either. What was so entertaining? What I saw was the opposite of funny. It was horrifying. What was wrong with his head? Oh, hello. He turned his hips so that everyone in the crowd could have a clear view, as if he didn't want anyone to miss it. Why are people laughing at this? A bystander heard me. I don't know, his face just seems so funny. I mean, look at it. I stared at him in disbelief. He and the others really did seem to find this funny. Were they seeing something I wasn't? No matter how long I looked at it, it didn't seem like anything other than disturbing. I averted my gaze and walked away. I wanted nothing to do with this madness. While continuing to comb through the town center, while trying to keep my distance from the crowd, I noticed that the sun had already started to rise, and I still hadn't found anything that even vaguely resembled a police station. It's kinda creepy, isn't it? I had walked by a girl that was standing nearby. She was watching from the crowd from a distance. Yeah, it is. I was glad to hear that someone else was thinking the same thing. An awkward pause followed. I was under the impression that she had wanted to start up a conversation, but I guess that wasn't the case. My stomach broke the silence. Are you hungry? Blood shot to my face. It was so true that I was feeling starved. Swallowing my pride, I nodded. I have a sandwich with me. You can have it. Are you sure? No worries. I'm not that hungry anyway. While I was embarrassed to accept her generosity, I was not embarrassed enough to refuse. I had to hold myself back as to not lunge into it, but I kept my cool and ate it cautiously as to not embarrass myself. Some of my strength returned to me. In the meanwhile, I decided to ask her about this town. Sorry, I don't really know my way around here that well. Oh, so you're not from here? No, not really. Maybe I could help you look. I'm feeling a bit uneasy being alone here anyways. I glanced back in the direction of the laughing crowd. Sure, I would really appreciate that. I'm Scott, by the way. I'm May. Nice to meet you. Meet me again? Don't I already know you? Weren't you in the last episode? We set off to look for help. The idea to call someone I knew from May's phone came up, but she didn't have it on her, unfortunately. We already tried that. That didn't work. Do I forget everything? We approached several people to ask them for directions or to lend their phones, but all of them seemed to ignore us. I tried to make some small talk with May every now and then, but her replies were always short and didn't leave much room for follow-ups. But she perked up when I asked her about her family. I have a sister. At first I thought that'd be all I'd get out of her, but she continued after a short pause. She's been home more recently. Usually she'd leave early and return late, or not return home at all for several days. Her job is really important, so it's understandable, but I was really happy when she told me that she wouldn't go to work for a while. I assumed she was finally able to request some time off, but she continued to work even at home. She's doing it to help people, and I'm proud of her, but I still wish we could hang out more. May hung her head. It seemed like I had touched on a sensitive topic. I thought of ways to console her or cheer her up, but I couldn't come up with anything to say. Since I didn't have any siblings, it was hard to relate. But it seemed like she really loved her sister. I could ironically relate more to May's sister, just as I to Just as her, I too have barely been home due to my work. And just like her, I'd likely still continue working, even if I was at home. But as opposed to May's sister, I didn't have anyone waiting for me back home. I decided against poking any further, and instead shifted my focus back to asking people for directions, without much luck. Oddly enough, it was as if they were all going in the same direction, the town center. Do you think they're going to see that performer? Maybe she just hadn't heard me? I turned around to ask her again, but she was nowhere to be seen. Just as I finished that thought, I felt a presence behind me. I slowly turned around. What the hell? What do you think? Do I look funny? What? No! Get away from me! I took a few steps back, almost afraid the man would lunge at me. But he didn't. He just stood there with his distorted face and his creepy wide eyes. I see. Maybe I didn't do it quite right. No, you did enough. You don't need to do anything else. I promise. And with that he walked off, almost disappointed. He took a book out of his pocket and started flipping through it. For some real reason, he seemed familiar. Was that the man in the crowd, in the laughing crowd that I had talked to earlier? This town was giving me the creeps. I needed to get out of here as fast as I could. But as I turned around, I saw that most of the people walking by had distorted their faces in one way or another. It was as if a virus had spread while we were looking for help. Without a second thought, I hurried off. I tried not to look anyone in the eye. But wherever I went, those people were everywhere. On top of that, the town seemed to have no end, as I couldn't find a road that led out, no matter how long I searched. Just as I was wondering about what to do, I recognized someone standing in the side of the road. There you are, you had me worried. Oh, I'm sorry. I had something to take care of. That sounded oddly vague. But I didn't want to be rude, so I dropped it. She did give me a sandwich after all. Did you have any luck finding your way back home? No, still nothing. And on top of that, there are all these weird people walking around. Actually, I know someone who might be able to help. You do? Yes. They don't live far from here. Well, how about I introduce you? And no worries. They don't own a dog. Oh. Yeah, sure, yeah. Why would you mention that, huh? Wasn't she new in this town? Maybe she met them while we were separated? And why did she bring up dogs? It's not like I ever told her whether I do or don't mind dogs. Perhaps I said something during my small talk attempts that made her think that way. I considered questioning her, but this was the only lead I had found so far, and I didn't want to lose this chance. We arrived at an old, tall building. I watched May from the corner of my eye. Something seemed different about her. I couldn't quite place the reason why. Perhaps it was just my imagination. They live here, on the highest floor. The building is pretty old, and not many people live there anymore, so it's a bit run down. I'd appreciate it if you went first. I didn't protest and led us into the structure. The building was quite desolate. Just as she had said. This place made me feel uneasy. I didn't want to stay here any longer than I had to. Not only was I afraid that everything would come down on our heads about every minute now, I could only imagine what could lurk in these abandoned halls. I couldn't blame her for wanting me to go first. After climbing a set of stairs, May spoke up again. It should be the door at the end of this hall. I saw the door she was referring to. It was probably the only door in the entire building that wasn't damaged. The clean coat of paint was an eerie contrast in the ravaged environment. And the one living there can help me out? No reply. I turned around and saw nothing. May was gone again. She could have at least said goodbye. I walked up to the door and knocked, but it was already open. Maybe I had the wrong door after all, yet May had seemed certain. What should I do? Take a look around the building. I shouldn't barge into a stranger's home like this. The door being open didn't mean I could just enter. My eyes wandered around the hallway, scanning it for anything notable. Maybe I could wait for them outside. I had noticed that the air felt oddly heavy. I made my way back down the hallway when I heard some noise from the ground floor downstairs. Was it another tenant? Maybe they could help me. I wasn't very hopeful, considering how badly it's been going so far, but it was worth a shot. Slowly, I creeped down the steps. I could make out a rhythmic, squishy sound that was getting louder and louder. An uneasy feeling was starting to set in my stomach. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, I saw a red trail on the ground. Blood. It must be blood. It led to an apartment. Its door was wide open. My feet froze. The sound was getting louder, more frantic. I needed to get out of this building. Something horrible was happening in here. But to get to the exit, I had to pass by the door, past the blood trail. I considered going back up, but then I would be leading myself into a dead end. My feet slowly started to move down the last couple of steps. Whoever or whatever was in that room couldn't notice me. Who knew what would happen in it to me if they did? The squishing became louder and louder the closer I got. Before long, I was standing right by the open door. The nameplate next to it read Frederick Stainer, a name that seemed oddly familiar. But it didn't matter, I just wanted to get out. I considered quickly running past it, but my curiosity overwhelmed me. I peeked in. The room behind it was almost pitch black. The sole window barely let any light through. I saw rhythmic movement in the middle of the room. Someone was hunched over something. As the person lifted their hand, once again, I saw a metallic glint in the light. They were holding a knife. They were stabbing someone over and over again. The techniques in this book are too simple. I don't have time for these childish games if I want to be as funny as the most hilarious one. Taking from the face, nonsense. Why just the face? There's so much missed potential. This is exactly what my studies had been leading up to. She just doesn't get it, but I do. I'll show her what it means to be funny. They were whispering to themselves in a gurgling voice. I had no idea what they were talking about. They must have gone mad. I stepped away, ready to leave this building for good. But my foot slipped on wet blood. I managed to catch myself and avoid falling, but I couldn't avoid making a sound. The movement inside the room suddenly stopped. Silence. Then their heads slowly turned my way. Who, who's there? The person frantically shook their grotesque head around. It seemed like they couldn't see past all the face modifications. The various body parts fused with their skin wiggled like worms crawling out of their head. Is that you, Sabrina? Have you come to your senses? Have you finally realized that this is the only way to make an actually funny face? Look at me. Soon I will be the most hilarious one. And then, his breathing was getting even heavier than before. They went back to dismantling the body in front of them. I was safe? They really couldn't see me. I was safe. Slowly, I breathed out. I had held my breath without even noticing. Trying not to make a sound, I stepped over the bloody trail and very, very cautiously made my way towards the exit. I definitely didn't want to get caught. Soon I was finally in front of the exit door. I could finally get out. But just as I was about to grab the handle, a sudden wave of fatigue came over me. It was as if I stepped into a veil. The air had gotten heavier, and my breathing became more ragged. I clutched my chest as I tried to figure out what was going on. A throbbing pain pulsed through my arm. It was as if something had stabbed me. I tried to turn around, but I had already became too weak. My feet gave in, and my vision darkened. I could feel a presence near me. The person from the apartment? Before I could find out, my consciousness faded. Oh. Excuse me. Ooh. Okay. So, is that it for this? What if you go inside the door? Hold on. Alright. Now we entered the apartment. Perhaps they forgot to lock the door, or May could have already notified them that we were coming, and they left the door open for us. I gave the door a soft push. Hello? No reply. It was a very small apartment. The door opened to the living room, which seemed to double as the bedroom. A single corridor led to two more rooms, probably the bathroom and kitchen. Just like the door itself, everything looked way too clean and tidy compared to the hallway outside. I didn't feel like breaking into a stranger's home, but they did leave the door open. Maybe they wanted me to wait inside. I stepped through the door and peered through a window, hoping to spot the person I was supposed to meet. The town looked normal from up here, but I knew that wasn't the case. Something was wrong with this place, and I was trapped here. Would I ever be able to return home? I had people who relied on me. Would my team at the lab manage without me? The only reason why I took on that project was so I could help them, and now I tore myself away from the window. It wasn't the time to think about that. What I should be concentrating on right now was finding a way out. I thought about what to do next. Let's just stay here. I shouldn't be too nosy after all. I was just a guest. So I waited. Suddenly, I heard a sound outside the apartment. I hastily slipped inside a closet and carefully pulled it shut. I wasn't sure why I was hiding, but I had an awful feeling in my guts. Finding a stranger standing in your apartment probably wouldn't be something someone would take in stride. Then again, finding one in your closet would be even worse. I watched through the slits in the door As they entered the apartment through the half-closed door, they stopped in the entryway and took a look around the room. Was this the tenant of the apartment? Shadows were obscuring parts of their body. I strained my eyes, trying to see what they looked like. But what I saw made me cover my mouth to suppress a gasp. Oh, a woman's face was ravaged. Fleshy chunks clung to her forehead. Were those face parts? Tisk tisk. Forgot to close the door again. She spoke to herself and moved as nothing was wrong, but her face, it was horrendous. She walked up to the mirror. This looks so much better, just like in the book. I should check the text again. I may have missed something. She picked up the box that was lying on the desk and flipped it open. I see. I need more. Yes, I definitely need more. She looked back to the mirror and caressed her disfigured face. She backed towards the exit and left the apartment. Her eyes never left the mirror. I remained frozen in the closet for a few more minutes, my heart slowly calming itself. Once I was sure that she was really gone, I left the closet. I need to get myself as far away from this building and hopefully this town as fast as I possibly could. As I was about to step out of the apartment, a sudden wave of fatigue came over me. It was as if I'd stepped into a veil. The air had gone heavier, and breathing became more ragged. I clutched my chest as I tried to figure out what was going on. A throbbing pain pulsed in my arm. It was as if something had stabbed me. I tried to turn around. My feet, vision darkened. I could feel presence. The woman? May? Before I could find out, my consciousness faded. Okay. Everything ends with me passing out, is what I'm getting. Okay. So, that was the second part of this. The third part is going to come in the next video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys are enjoying the series. I'm going to finish it today. We're going to play the third one today. I'm going to post it today. I'm going to be done with this series. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you in the next video. Goodbye for now.